Okay, I am so excited today. I have my good friend of 10 years, Johannys Acevedo, who will be joining us today. And we're talking about techniques for families. We've gone through a crazy last year, and Johnny's comes from Puerto Rico, where she did her undergraduate work in special education. She came here to Seattle, which is where we met, where she was continuing her education to become a drama therapist, also focusing in couples and family therapy. So she's here today to give us some tips and tricks and guide us as parents of what we can do to help our kids go through this season that we're still kind of walking through. Um, there's been a lot going on in the last year, as we all know. And so, yeah, Johannes, thank you so much for joining me.
Well,
Um,
thanks for having me. Sorry, I have something in my eye, but
oh,
I'm not crying.
I was going to say.
I know, it's special. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and join you to talk about this important topic that I think it's at the forefront of our hearts and our minds for all of us, regardless if we have kids at home or we're teachers or we're grandparents. It doesn't matter. Like I feel like we're all worried about our future generations, how this whole year has impacted them in the long term and in the short term. So, yeah, I'm happy to just share this time with you and hopefully support and provide some resources for the parents and teachers that are listening to this. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, let's get started with our first question. So, I mentioned that you have a focus in drama therapy, and I think maybe for a lot of people, they might not know what that means. So, can you maybe kind of give us a little background about what drama therapy is?
Mhm. So drama therapy is one of it's under what is called the arts therapist or creative art therapy. So that includes music, it includes movement, dance, and art. So drama therapy is one of those five. And even though in the drama therapy we include some of these, like it's just they're all connected. Drama therapy focuses more in somatic experiences, and I want to read the definition from the National Association of Drama Therapy, so everyone has like a streamlined definition of what it means, and it says. The National Association of Drama Therapy defines drama therapy as an active experiential approach to facilitating change through storytelling, projective play, purposeful improvisation, and performance.
Wow.
So all of those elements and techniques are used, especially storytelling. And I think that's one of the things that I love so much about drama therapy is the fact that it creates a very safe environment. So I feel like when we think about therapy, I don't know for everyone else listening, but for me, before learning all this, it was like laying on a couch and like using weird things to hypnotize you, or all these things that we see in movies and culturally the idea we have about therapy. But drama therapy, the cool thing is that you don't really need to even talk if you don't want to. And you get to use externalization and storytelling and role play to tell your story and find healing through those things. And it helps with emotional regulation, it helps with problem solving, especially for kids,
Yeah.
because we can create in that space, just a story in which they can practice those skills that
Mhm.
people need in real life to face different realities that they may be going through or they will go through. So in the drama therapy space, there's not future, present, past. Like you can make up all these things to support not only children, but families and couples in their journey to find healing. So, yeah.
Wow. I love I like just as you're explaining that to think about how effective that could be, especially as we're thinking about children. And like you said, it's obviously for all ages, but just um, the ability to be able to role play and see,
Yes.
yeah, process things in that way is huge.
Yeah, yeah. Play therapy. and drama therapy are very interconnected. You do have to get certified as a play therapist. So you can be a drama therapist, but to actually call yourself a play therapist, you have to get training for that, which is really interesting because they're very similar, but they have very specific thing. There's something called sand play that is used very, very much during a play therapy session. And for that, you need tons of hours of training because you present all these little miniatures to kids that they use in this sand tray. And then that's the way they recreate their traumatic experience, which is sometimes, I mean, the cool thing about this is that that child may not be super aware of what's going on, but you as a therapist, you see all the interactions that they're doing with these little figurines. And through that, without knowing it, they're processing their trauma. They're talking about it without using words,
Yeah.
which is, I think, beautiful because I think even as adults, sometimes when we try to tell our story with only words, it's hard. But when you offer these vehicles, these avenues to actually process that trauma without asking them what happened to you, you don't have to ask because you will see it through their play.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's one of the things that sounds like, oh, only a professional can do that. But as a parent, these are things you can pay attention to when you're at home with your kids and when they're playing, because through play, the subconscious is activated. And so things that we may not know that are going on in our brain come out so subconsciously. So you can, as a parent, as a caregiver, you can pay attention and notice if the play of your child has become more violent or more quiet, um, or more insecure, or everything about the child's world is externalized to play. So it's really important to just pay attention to those subtle cues of what's going on in their inner world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually leads us to our next question, which is perfect. Just considering, what our last year has been with COVID, and so many families have been isolated,
Mhm.
just interacting with other people face to face. How would you say you feel that has affected specifically young people? I think, um, we say a lot of times that kids are resilient and they will make it through, which kids do. But I think sometimes we forget that, in their resiliency, that we miss some of the things that they're struggling with. And so I think that might be on every parent's, mind. It's like, is my kid, are they okay? Are they processing this okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's such a good question and so true. The idea that we think that kids are resilient, which is like you said, like we all have resiliency, right? And I think it resiliency doesn't mean that what we're going through is not going to affect us. It means that in that process, we have the tools to work through that and come out of it with a learning experience or stronger or just with a story to tell, right? Or a story that will help others. But the reality is that there's going to be an impact, right? And especially with kids, because their prefrontal cortex is still developing and the area of the brain that helps them regulate their emotions is still developing. They need us to provide that for them, right? And when I was thinking about this question about how this time of lockdown and isolation has impacted, I thought about the idea that I thought about a spectrum, right? I think the impact of COVID is been so wide and so big and so spread out. But when you think about a kid that had already a difficult situation live in their home, a violent environment, or not a safe place, or neglect. When you think about all these things and you put on top of that a pandemic, then we need to start talking about trauma and about a traumatic experience that's been added to what they've already been through.
Mm.
And so for those kinds of kids, it's going to be really important to provide help, because for these types of kids that were in a very difficult situation at home, school was their safe place.
Mm.
School was where they got to take a break and not think about the reality. Um, when they had teachers that were looking out for them, when they had full meals, and then all of a sudden, this is like just completely stripped down and not no longer an opportunity and availability for them.
Mm.
um, and so it's very disempowering, right? As a kid, to all of a sudden you have no voice, you have no one to talk about what's going on in your life, and on top of that, you are in the house where you feel the most unseen and abandoned, right? So, which when I think about this, it makes me like, ah, my heart hurts for these kids, because um, it's a lot. But then on the other hand, you have kids that had a good, safe situation at home. Um, and for those kids, it's not that it's going to be easier, but there's already an environment of support,
Mm.
and people in their lives that are going to be able to walk them through how it's going to look like reintegrating to school. Because questions that these kids are going to ask are that for us, maybe as adults, are like, simple questions. They don't really matter. But like, are my friends still my friends?
Mm.
Like, are they still gonna like me? Are they still gonna be wanna, like play with me?
Mm.
Um, and those questions create anxiety,
Mm.
because if we transfer those questions into an adult life, it's like, if I go back to work, like, would I be able to know how to talk to my coworkers? Like, I don't know if this has happened to you, but for me, I'm an extrovert, and this time of pandemic has made me more of an introvert. I'm like, I don't know how to have conversations with people, like, especially, and we live in a community, like I live in a community where I tend to see more adults, but for people that's not their reality, and they are, with kids all day long, and they don't have any adult connection, like, it's tough. Like, you lose those social skills,
Mm.
right? So I think the impact is going to depend on how what was the reality of these kids before the pandemic, and the resources that they have around them. Because it's really sad, but this pandemic has also exacerbated more violence within certain households, where financial hardship has become the reality, when where sickness have struck them, and they're already in a vulnerable position, and then you add, I mean, it's not easy when you have to be in a house with your kids all day long, for someone that, I mean, even for me, that, oh, you will think, oh, you have all the skills, and there are days that I'm like, I'm out. Like, this is a lot to handle, so um I think that we we are slowly gonna see the impact of this, but I also think that as a community, we need to understand that it's good for the kids to go back to school, right? And it's going to take a lot. And for parents, and for teachers too, it's going to be important to pay attention to different behaviors that are going to come out. Maybe kids that didn't have any social anxiety
Mm.
before the pandemic, now going back to school. And I want to say that we're going to have to normalize that and make it okay for them to be in that space of feeling anxious. Um, because also, bonus, people are telling these kids there's a deadly virus that it can kill you. So you cannot be close to friends, you cannot share your lunch, you cannot share your snacks. And so even though I think it's good that they slowly start to reintegrate to what they know as normal, it's going to take all of us to understand that it's not going to be like a switch and that everything is going to go back to,
Yeah,
to how it was before.
it's
Yeah.
great. Those are great things to consider. And
Yeah.
Kind of goes into the next question of I'm so glad you mentioned your training in drama therapy and also play therapy, because I think those are great options for families who are looking
Mhm.
for specific therapy to help their kids
Yeah.
further outside of their own skills. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think there's probably a big population too that, for whatever reason, getting help might not be in their realm of options right now. Uh,
Yeah.
so, are there some things that, even parents or educators or grandparents, anyone, that they can do to help support our kids from home? Just some free resources, uh, things that, yeah, they can. I know you mentioned one, which is really focusing on play and noting changes. But are there any other techniques that you could share with us, maybe that could be helpful for people at home?
Yeah, for sure. So there are many things we can do at home. I'm also always thinking about, I feel for parents that are working full time, right? And they are doing distance learning and working from home, and trying to balance all these things. And so I'm also very cautious of like I don't want to add to your plate, like,
Yes, so true.
but also my hope is that people have other adults in their life that they can bring in to support them in supporting their kids, right? The first thing I will say is their own mental health as parents. Like, it's going to be really important that if you, as a mom, as a dad, as an aunt, grandma, caregiver, you are identifying that you are struggling yourself, that you reach for help. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that you go in and necessarily find a therapist, but that you have someone to talk to, that you have an outlet, that you have a way that you can um, process your own traumatic experience with this. Because as adults, we've also experienced so many losses um, during this year. So I will say that's the first thing. Whatever it is, if you like drawing, if you like painting, if it's listening to music, cooking, baking, whatever it is that is gonna bring a sense of control,
Mhm.
uh, it's very beneficial for
Yeah.
your mental health as a caregiver. And while that's true for adults, it's also true for kids. They've lost all control during this year. So our job is to provide opportunities for a sense of control, for a
Mhm.
sense of I have a voice, like I get to choose something, because most of these kids would have not chosen ever to be out of school.
Sure.
That's where their friends are. That's where they go on field trips. That's where they spend the majority of their days. When you think about it, I mean, most kids are in school from like 7:30 to 3:30, and then like extracurricular things. So all of a sudden, that control, that predictability was removed from their lives, right? So it's going to be important that it can be as simple. I mean, when you think about toddlers as, which shoes do you want to wear today? The blue ones or the red ones? And then for bigger ones, um, would you like to, I don't know, eat these today or eat this other thing? Or would you like to clean your room before or after you do this other thing, before or after you read a book? So just simple inserts of that will provide an opportunity for them to exercise control, I'll say, could be really beneficial. And then breathing is a huge one. And I know I'm always like, are people tired of hearing about breathing? Because it seems like everyone is talking about how important breathing is. But it is. It is when we breathe, we're oxygenating our brains, right? And if you think about moments where we are losing control of our emotions, people, or like you got a really sad or crazy news, people always say, breathe.
Yeah.
When you're having a baby, breathe, right? Like it's the way that we bring awareness back to our bodies. So This is something that I love teaching parents and educators. It's about flipping the lid. So if you just do like you put your thumb and then you close it, kids when they are overwhelmed and when they feel out of control, we call it that their lid flip, right? So this part of their brain that is not developed is exposed, and so all their thinking brain, which is right here, it's no longer there, so it went. So this is our primal brain. Is the brain is where amygdala is. So it's that part of the brain that has the freeze, the fight or flight reflex, right? And so that's when we instead of reminding them how many times we've told you not to do that. It is not the time for that. We first need to close that lid, and then we kind of like try to repair and teach for the next time that lead wants to flip, teach them the skills that are going to be helpful for themselves to close the bag and bring that thinking brain and analytical brain back into circulation. Because when it's exposed, there's no thinking. There's only like, that's why in those moments so many kids punch and kick and bite or run, or just shut down completely crying, right? So as a parent, I would love if you can take anything away from this talk is that this image of a brain, and just remind yourself when you're in that moment that your lid is probably flipped too, and so helping yourself through breathing, bringing that lid back, and then helping your kid closer as well. So that will be the second thing, breathing, and then reminding you of this diagram. And then I will say that the third thing will be um, validating their experience. Because there's no use. I mean, as adults, we know this. If I go to my friend and I'm like, my husband did this, or my kids are doing this, and they're like, oh, well, you'll get over it. It'll be fine. You're like, okay, thank you. That didn't help, right? And I think we do that so much with our own kids. Like, oh, you're fine. Oh, it's okay. Oh, just move on. Oh, it doesn't matter. Or so, and I don't think we do it with the intention of diminishing their experience. We do it because sometimes we're like, you are surely okay. We know they're okay, but in their heads, they're not. And that's their reality, that's their experience. And we have the capacity to see past that moment. Kids are very present focused, they're just in it fully, their bodies, their minds, their emotions, all of it. They're fully in that moment of not getting the color of the cup that they wanted, right? So it's huge. And so instead of saying, oh, you got the cup that you got, and that's okay, you should just be thankful that you have a cup. Oh, you really wanted this other cup. Well, that cup is dirty right now, we cannot use it. This one is available. Should we do it? Or do you think we should clean the other one? And just trying to find a way of making their experience valid, right? And these are like everyday instances. But when it comes to the experience of social anxiety or the traumatic experience that they've been through, is going to be even more important to recognize it's really scary to think about going back to school. You don't know what you're going to encounter. You've been here and obviously I'm talking, place where you have caregivers or parents that are able and have the resources to do this, which when I think about this, the word community comes to mind, because then if you are a parent that has those resources, part of our responsibility is to give back, right? And without being condescending, offering this in a way that feels supportive to other families that we think may need it. So validating them and just providing them an opportunity to feel what they need to feel, right? And that's when a piece of paper and a crayon comes very handy. And just like, let's draw what you're experiencing. Let's draw what's going on for you right now. And I have seen this many times, just literally giving a child that is having a hard time like a blank piece of paper, and for them to just write whatever, and like just go to town with that piece of paper, it's very empowering, because you are not suppressing their emotions, but you're allowing it. And we always talk about the idea that they are not bad emotions. They're hard emotions, and they're all important for us, and they're all there to protect us. But sometimes they get used, in or they get so much bigger than we can control, right? And that's what we want to work with. We don't want to call it like, it's important to get angry. Angry helps find justice, right? um, it's important, to get frustrated. Frustration finds helps you find new ideas, right? But how are we going to use those emotions to our benefit, instead of, to a detriment? So
Yeah.
yeah, so I hope that was
No, those are so good. Those are no, that's what I was hoping for, was just some like tangible things that parents and educators or anybody can do to really feel like they can support our young people in this season.
yeah.
And I know you have such expertise that we could, it makes me so sad that we can't go on forever and ever and ever because we
I'm
have, I
like,
feel
it's
like
very what?
you have so much to share. We might have to do a part B or part C another
I
day.
would love to. I
Um,
would love to.
but this has been
It'd
so
be really cool to do like a live, drama therapy session, kind of like a snippet into what that would look like.
totally,
Yeah.
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, it's been so good though. No, this is what I was hoping to just be able to share. And thank you, Johnny's, for coming and joining us and giving people hope because I think that's part of it is just what can we actually do, and helping people realize there's more that we can do than sometimes we can
Yeah.
see just initially. Uh,
Mhm.
but
Totally. Yes.
we will link some extra. I know you have some resources also,
Mhm.
for people to kind of learn more about the therapy side of things and also different
Yes.
techniques.
Yeah.
We'll link that for you guys to have.
Yes.
But thank you
You're
again.
welcome. Thanks for doing this, and for, being so intentional about helping parents during this time, because I think not all of us are maybe willing to reach out for help, but when we find things like this, is a reminder that, oh, like, it's okay if I need help. Like, it's okay if I'm not okay right now, because believe me, it's a collective not okayness. So we're all in it together. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We'll talk.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.